China, the blind Chinese dissident who was hiding out in the United States Embassy in Beijing now says he wants to come to the United States. But does the United States know that? Former UN Ambassador John Bolton joins us. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So what is the situation right now in Beijing as you see it from this side of the world?
Well, I think we've got a train wreck in process here. The dissident, Chen Guangcheng, is outside the American embassy, meaning he's no longer under our protection. He's saying that he left because Chinese authorities were threatening to kill his wife. And he now says he wants to leave China and come to the United States. The State Department is denying big chunks of that. So we've got a real disconnect between what our State Department thought they were doing and what this now very vulnerable Chinese dissident thinks was happening.
You know, he's very vulnerable. He's in a hospital, and I'm a little bit curious about one thing, and that's that I had some communication from a U.S. official in Beijing who has said that at no time, and I trust this official, at no time when he was in the embassy did he ask to go to the United States. They asked him repeatedly, and he repeatedly affirmed he wanted to remain in China to continue his work. So I'm somewhat sympathetic to the situation over there. I think that he's saying different things at different times. He's uncertain. I don't know if it's because he's terrified or because he's confused or because he's got other problems going on. But I think that the U.S. embassy there is getting a little bit of a runaround.
Well, I must say, though, the State Department is saying contradictory things. Let's take the claim that he has made repeatedly that U.S. officials told him that the Chinese were threatening to kill his wife. Now, this is a pretty important point. And the State Department says officially, well, no, that's not the story. But in the New York Times, it will appear tomorrow, quoting an unnamed official, Jane Perlez, an experienced international reporter, says that they did tell Chen, Americans did tell Chen, that he would not see his wife, who was in Beijing, unless he left the embassy, that is to say, left American protection. And they then said she, the wife, would be sent back to Mr. Chen's home village in Shandong, where no one could guarantee her safety. That's what the American official is saying they told him. Now, that sounds a lot like, nice wife you got there. Be a shame if anything happened to her. So if I were in Chen's position, it sounds to me like he did think American officials were telling him his wife was in danger. That's a pretty powerful incentive to leave.
Were we, or should the United States, I mean, like, a dissident shows up at our doorstep in Beijing. He's got a family someplace. He didn't bring his family. What are we to do? I mean, if all of a sudden, you know, and what if we think, you know, well, the wife is going to have problems, and I think that's probably the first thing we all thought is, does he have family? I mean, what are we to do in that instant?
Well, we are committed by our own law to grant political asylum to people who have a well-founded fear of persecution, if he asks. Now, it is also the case, once he crosses that doorway into the American embassy, the whole world is different. In Chinese eyes, in Chinese official eyes, that's virtually an act of treason. And this is where there's another important point. The Chinese have demanded an American apology and a commitment that we no longer use unusual means to get people like Chen into the embassy. What do they mean by that? Let me tell you something. If you're a blind Chinese man walking on crutches toward the American embassy, you're not going to get there with your ID not being checked by the Chinese security guards outside. I think what happened here is that Chen was taken into the American embassy in an official American car, which the Chinese security guards dare not intercept. So if that's true, if there was any American assistance to get him into the embassy, the State Department, Secretary Clinton, should have known in advance that this was going to be a major incident. I think this is being this is an act of diplomatic malpractice underway.
I think that changes the dynamics if we almost went out to his house and got him and gave him the ride there. I mean, however he got to the embassy, to me, makes a big difference.
Honestly,
whether
how
we went
could
out
he
and
have
fetched
gotten
him.
in?
Look, he's blind. You know, good question. I mean, how did he get there? I mean, we can step it back. I mean, first of all, how did he escape, number one? Secondly, how far is home from the embassy, and how did he get there? He didn't drive there. So, I mean, somebody helped him. So I think there's a lot more that we don't know. The only thing is that inside the embassy, from what I understand, is that he said he wanted to go to the hospital and he didn't want to go to the United States. And I think that's only complicated things. And, I have no idea what happened beyond that.
Look, ultimately, of course, he would prefer to remain in China, but he's only got 3 options once he's inside that embassy. Go to the United States, stay in the embassy for God knows how long, or walk back outside. And once he walks back outside, he is at dramatically greater risk. You know, the administration says, oh, we cut a deal with China. We got assurances of his security. Oh, really? Well, that's really a lot to go on, isn't it?
Isn't his family at risk if he also stays there? I mean, at least in our eyes. Family's at risk if he goes to the United States alone. Family's at risk if he stays there by himself. Family's at risk if he goes out. I mean, his family's at risk, at least I assume, no matter what.
The family was at risk when he escaped house arrest. That first act always puts the family at risk. The question now is, are they any safer now that he's out of the embassy? And the answer to that is certainly not. What possible way do we have to make the Chinese live up to a commitment to treat him securely? We do know, and there's no ambiguity about this, Chinese authorities were arresting his colleagues.
And I got to go. Ambassador, thank you. I'm sure we're going to have a lot more of this. Thank you, sir. Straight ahead.